Hey top centers, Raptor Joey here with another episode of FutureSight. Today looking at what Plasma Storm has brought to the format and what changes it's made. Now before I roll into the episode, I feel I should explain why I'm covering Plasma Storm now, instead of when it was initially released. Well, to be honest, I wanted to comment on the cards that have made a difference to the format early on, and not what I thought might make an impact. Hence why I won't be covering loot yet, because it's done nothing so far. The first card I'm going to look at is actually a response to a question from Goy Martin, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, on my last episode covering Clank Valiant. They asked, impressions on the laser thingy. But I assume they meant hypnotoxic laser. So, my opinion on the card. It's an incredibly useful card and one of the few item cards that's been sought after as a supporter. The fact that it's a guaranteed status on an item card makes it completely invaluable, added to the fact that it can be comboed with Burbank City Gym to deal 30 damage for no energy, which last I recalled was a good thing, and you're off to a great start. On that same note, Hypnotoxic and Burbank are able to be splashed into quite a few decks, with only a few decks not having the space to fit them in. It can be worked into Darkrai Hammers next to no sacrifice. Also, it can benefit attackers like Tornadus X, allowing them an easy and consistent 90 damage turn 1, as well as benefiting Tornadus with an extra stadium to fit into its list. So in short, Hypnotoxic Laser is a potent card that should remain playable in the format for quite a while. Next we'll move on to a card I've already covered in the previous episode. Sorry it was so short by the way. That card is Clank. As previously covered, Clank single-handedly made Steel decks playable in the current format by simply saying that Steel Pokemon are immune to damage from Pokemon X. And with that, most decks in the format have to rely on some kind of backup attacker, which tends to be our old friend Bench Genie. None of this card was considered bad, but there are other options, like Moltres, who can survive a steel bullet, but he has to discard an energy to attack, and when combined with his attack cost of 4, only a handful of decks can afford this attack. Most notably, Blastoise Keldeo, as a large energy costs barely face this deck. Basically, the introduction of the Plasma Clank has made counter-attacking an absolute must, unless you want an auto loss. Which brings us to the next card I want to cover from Plasma Storm, Cabal X. Now I know I've already covered Clank Valiant, once again, sorry it was such a short episode. But Cabal X deserves a good mention here too. Cabal X is an essential card for the Clank deck. Without it, the deck would have next to no decent attackers. Plasma Storm itself only cables Skarmory and 2 different Durants, and all of these cards support multiple energy attacks but offer very little damage output. Aside from them, there's also cards like Scizor, which is an evolution, and even if it delivers the same 100 for 3 energy, it can't use the attack again next turn. Of course, we do have the Sacred Sword Valiant, but really if you don't have Valiant X, then the only Valiant you would run would be the one from Noble Victories for its Iron Breaker. But that would only leave you with 4 attackers in the entire deck, and an increased chance of starting with a lone Flynn. Another point that should be made with Cabal X is his moveset. Cabal X is the only Cabalion that can attack for 1 energy, and the ability to discard your opponent's special energies is an amazing plus to have in a deck that intends to wall an opponent. Add this to the fact that Steel Bullets also bypasses Plasma Steel's effect, and you have a capable attacker for the mirror match. So yeah, Cabal X, card that made attack locking tier 1. So already we've only covered 3 cards, and we find that Plasma Storm has started to shape a whole new format, with Hypnotoxic Laser offering new life to Darkrai variants, and giving a new niche for Tornadus X to fill, and Clank with Cabal X creating a powerful attack lock deck that's been topping UK cities quite consistently. And we already find that Plasma Storm is a set that's bringing a sense of diversity to the game. I mean, look at the format about a month ago, nothing but Keldeo Blastoise as far as the eye could see. Continuing on with the overview of Plasma Storm, we come to Colress. Without question, the biggest hype supporter the set has produced, and the one card I've always been a bit iffy on. Not because I think it's bad, mostly due to the question, how does this fit in my deck? Colress can offer great draw potential, but unlike the other staple draw supporters in the format, it's not a question of being able to simply splash 4 in a deck and just roll with it. In the early game, Colress is a bad supporter. Between you and your opponent, there might only be 4 Pokemon on the bench in the first 2 turns of the game. Having Colress as your only means of hand refresh could potentially leave you in a tough position unless you draw amazingly. That being said, in the mid to late game, Colress becomes a totally different card, being able to net you between 6 to 10 cards on shuffle draw, and with your deck thinned out due to early game searching, you can find yourself with a lot of options very fast. The simplest way I found myself looking at Colress is that it's the polar opposite to N, where N will grant you a strong hand early game. He's not too effective later on when you've taken a few prizes, whereas Colress is pretty bad early game, but an amazing card to have when the board fills up. Colress, your worst enemy and best friend. Next we come to Escape Rope, or some older players might call it, Warp Point. I really don't get why they renamed it. Put into layman's terms, Escape Rope makes both you and your opponent switch out their active Pokemon, with your opponent switching first. This card is a godsend to anyone who wants to run a deck full of heavy Pokemon. Decks like Clank Valiant and fighting variants, if they ever want to make a return. The release of this card basically means that these decks can effectively run 8 switch, meaning if your opponent catches out something you rather not have active, you've got a pretty good chance of having a way to switch out in hand, while also gaining the added advantage of being able to switch to something that can best deal with your opponent's new active Pokemon. Now I know I voiced my doubts about this card in my episode covering Articuno X, what your opponent can have a choice of what to bring out, but in decks like Clank Valiant, you're going to benefit from being able to run up to 8 switch. Note I'm saying up to 8. I wouldn't personally suggest dedicating 8 spaces in your deck to switching out. Maybe about 6. With the increased number of switch cards in your deck, you'll be better prepared to deal with your opponent's catchers, especially if you're struggling to get the black-white Clang set up. Escape Rope, allowing you to escape from bad situations. While on the subject of switching, this set also bothers the ace-spec card, Scramble Switch. Now, out of the ace-spec cards in the set, Scramble Switch is the one that seems to have received the least attention, mostly because it has to compete with other ace-spec cards like FutureSight and Machine, both of which seem universally useful, and it depends on the deck you're running on which is more beneficial. Although more people seem to prefer FutureSearch. What can I say? It seems early game consistency is a thing nowadays. That coupled with the fact that the only deck that seems to be able to make effective use of Scramble Switch is Keldeo Blastoise. And it's easy to see why most people have been leaping at it, which is a shame because as a tech in Keldeo Blastoise, it's pretty effective. Being able to switch to a fresh Keldeo and then move the energy across from the old active is, in my opinion, a great way to conserve energy retrievals for a later game when recovering energy for a final push will be more crucial. It also allows for a sudden endgame push where you can switch to a benched Mewtwo and not have to hope that you can scrounge up enough energy to end the game, as you're going to be supplying him with at least 3 from Keldeo. Scramble Switch. It doesn't switch the format, so people aren't scrambling for it. God, that pun was flavored. Moving on. As mentioned before, the format now has the Dowsing Machine ace-spec. And what else can I say about this card other than its junk arm after hitting the gym? Where the old junk arm would only grab trainer item cards, Dowsing Machine takes it a step further and will grab any trainer card at the cost of 2 cards from your hand. You may recall, as I also mentioned before, that players seem to prefer computer search over Dowsing Machine. And it's true for the same cost energy search will grab you any card from your deck, whereas Dowsing Machine will only grab you trainers from the start. That being said, Dowsing Machine does have its merits when compared to computer search. Computer search tends to be the early game go-to card. If you draw it late game, it tends to be situational on whether it's going to make or break the game for you. Heck, in the late game, you'd probably prefer to draw the card that you want a computer search for. Whereas Dowsing Machine can come into its own in the late game, where it can basically turn 2 cards in hand into your 5th capture and potentially win you the game. That being said, it's still situational, but in a longer game, you're more likely to want to capture after playing your 4th than a computer search that can't really grab you anything because you've already set up. Dowsing Machine, digging up all kinds of treasure. So that's pretty much Plasma Storm covered in a nutshell. In short, I feel Plasma Storm has been one of the best sets released in this format, as it's the first to really diversify the format instead of cementing a certain deck as best deck in format. And along with bringing a whole new deck to the format, it's also brought new life and potential into old cards. But that's my opinion. What about you guys? Is there a certain card you feel I've overlooked? Or do you feel the Plasma Storm really hasn't changed the format at all? Be sure to leave a comment in the section below. I look forward to hearing your opinions. And if you like this video, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. So until next time, I'm Master Joey. You guys are the top percent. Laters.